So you're thinking about environmental engineering.
Which, honestly, it's like the field, especially now, and it seems like it's getting more and more relevant. We're really diving deep today.
Yeah.
You sent over a ton of interesting articles,
Yeah.
excerpts, all about the skills you need, career paths,
Yeah.
the practical stuff. And something really jumped out at me.
Go ahead.
Did you know, one of the biggest job markets, the fastest growing for environmental engineers?
Is actually like the corporate world.
Interesting.
It seems like every industry, from fashion to tech, they're all realizing they need someone on their team who can help them, reduce their impact, be more environmentally friendly.
It's true.
That's pretty wild, right?
It really is. It's a major shift. I think companies are starting to see sustainability as not just a compliance thing or even ethics, but really a smart business strategy.
It makes sense, but I think for some of us who didn't grow up building solar panels in our backyard.
Right.
Could we back up a little?
Sure.
What do environmental engineers actually do, day to day?
Yeah, so they're problem solvers, basically,
Well,
using engineering to address environmental challenges.
okay.
So think of them as architects of a greener future,
Right.
Finding ways to design and build, whether it's a factory or, a city block, in a way that really minimizes that environmental footprint.
So is that are we talking making sure a building uses, energy efficient light bulbs? Or is it
more complex than that?
It's definitely a lot more complex. So energy efficiency is a part of it for sure, but environmental engineers are dealing with water.
Resources, air pollution, waste.
How
do you treat it, dispose of it?
Designing systems that prevent or clean up contamination.
So they're like environmental detectives, in a way.
Right.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
They need to really understand different scientific disciplines.
Chemistry, biology, hydrology, to analyze problems.
Okay.
Anticipate impacts and come up with sustainable solutions.
And that's where the detective work comes in.
Exactly. So they're on the ground a lot.
Collecting samples, doing tests,
Wow.
using software to model how pollution spreads or how a construction project might impact the local ecosystem.
Okay, so it's a lot more dynamic than just sitting at a desk.
Right.
Which I think is the vision people have of engineering sometimes.
Sure, for sure.
So they're not always behind a desk. What is the typical, I guess?
It's a blend work environment. You might find them in an office.
Okay.
Working with other engineers, scientists, designing plans, looking at data, writing reports.
Right.
But yeah, also on site at a construction site,
Okay.
a manufacturing plant.
Right.
Even out in the field, actually seeing how a project impacts the environment.
That's pretty cool, getting to see both worlds.
One thing I did see in the stuff you sent, it sounds like environmental engineers sometimes work with hazardous materials.
It's true.
Is that something, someone going into this field, should they be concerned about that?
It's definitely something to be aware of. It depends on the specialization. But you might be exposed to contaminated soil, polluted water, industrial chemicals, things like that.
Wow.
Safety is really important in this field.
Okay.
So there's a lot of training on how to handle hazardous materials, protective gear, following safety protocols.
That makes sense.
But the good news is that with the right precautions,
those risks can be minimized for sure. So we've got this blend of office work, on-site problem solving, little dash of risk management. What might they do? What are some things an environmental engineer might do on any given day? What does that look like practically?
So let's say you're an environmental engineer working on a new neighborhood or residential development.
Okay.
You might be designing a stormwater management system that prevents flooding, stops erosion, but also filters out pollutants before they get into the water.
Okay.
Or maybe you're cleaning up a former industrial site.
Right.
Figuring out how to clean up the soil and the groundwater.
That's quite a range.
These excerpts you sent mentioned GIS mapping.
Yeah.
And how it's a vital tool now.
It's essential.
Can you break that down for us? What is that?
Yeah, so GIS stands for Geographic Information System.
Okay.
It's basically software that lets engineers visualize, analyze, and interpret geographic data.
So maps, satellite imagery.
Exactly. But GIS takes it a step further. You can layer different types of data on top of each other.
Oh, wow.
So an environmental engineer might use this to, for example, figure out the best place for a new wind farm.
Okay, how would that work?
So they could combine data on wind patterns, topography, how close it is to power grids, land use, and even the potential potential environmental impacts.
And by layering this data, they can see this comprehensive picture that helps them determine the best location to maximize energy production while minimizing the negative stuff.
So they need a pretty unique set of skills.
They do.
It's not your average engineering gig.
It's very multidisciplinary. You need the engineering.
You need the environmental science and increasingly data analysis and technology skills.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
So let's get into those skills because I'm really interested in what someone needs to, break into this field.
So we were talking about all the skills that environmental engineers need.
Right.
What are we talking about specifically?
Well, you have to have the engineering basics down. Understanding things like fluid mechanics for water projects, thermodynamics for energy efficiency, even geotechnical engineering for assessing soil, especially for construction projects.
Right.
And it's not just about the equations and stuff. You have to be able to apply those principles to actually solve those real-world environmental problems.
Like having the tools and knowing when to use which one.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And then you've got the environmental science side of it, too.
Right.
You need to understand ecological principles, pollution control, environmental regulations.
That makes sense, but I saw some stuff in here about like other skills, too.
Okay.
Like communication, problem solving. I always think of those as,
Right.
environmental engineering skills.
Those are crucial, though. Remember, environmental engineers work in teams with other engineers, scientists, policymakers, even the public sometimes. You have to be able to communicate complicated stuff clearly. And that's writing reports, presenting findings, maybe even explaining the impact of a project to a community.
Right. So it's not just the science. It's getting everyone on the same page about it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And problem solving is huge.
Okay.
Environmental problems are rarely simple.
Right.
Lots of stakeholders, competing interests.
For sure.
Uncertainty. You need to think critically, weigh your options, come up with solutions that protect the environment, but also make sense economically, socially.
So you need to be a little creative.
Definitely.
It's not just all data and regulations.
Not at all. In fact, one of the coolest things I've seen is this emphasis on biomimicry.
Bio what?
Biomimicry.
Okay. I'm going to need you to,
Basically, you're looking to nature for design inspiration.
All right.
Nature's been solving problems, like, a long time, right?
Wow.
Millions of years.
That's true.
So why not learn from the best?
That's cool.
So, for example,
Yeah.
there are wind turbines designed after humpback whale fins.
Really?
Yeah, the bumps on the whale fin, those reduce drag in the water. So engineers copied that and made wind turbine blades that are way more efficient, generate more energy.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Just goes to show what we can learn if we actually pay attention.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So we've talked about the skills you need, but how do you even start?
Yeah.
What's the career path like?
Well, the job outlook is really good.
Okay, that's good to hear.
It's growing much faster than average, which makes sense. I mean, everyone's thinking about sustainability these days.
Right.
So usually you start with a bachelor's degree in
environmental engineering.
You got it.
Okay.
But related fields work too. Civil engineering, chemical engineering, environmental science.
Okay, cool. So you've got your degree. It's a competitive job market. What are some tips?
Experience.
Okay.
Internships, co-ops, volunteer at environmental organizations.
Okay.
That shows employers that you actually know what you're doing.
So real world experience to go with the academic stuff.
Exactly. And network.
Okay.
Go to industry events, join professional organizations like ASCE or AAEs.
What are those again?
American Society of Civil Engineers, American Academy of Environmental Engineers and Scientists.
Okay, got it.
It's all about meeting people, learning about jobs.
Making those connections.
Yeah, exactly. And while you're at it, build a portfolio of all your work, projects, research, even volunteer stuff that can make you stand out.
Right, like your environmental engineering highlight reel.
Exactly. And don't forget about certifications.
Oh, yeah? Are there specific ones that are important?
LEE certification's a big one.
Leadership in energy and environmental design, right?
Get it. Yeah.
Yeah, I've even seen that on, like, apartment listings and stuff.
It's everywhere. Another important one is the professional engineer license, the PE.
Okay.
You don't always need it right away, but if you want to move up,
got it. Okay.
You'll need it. And then there are more specific ones too for hazardous waste, environmental consulting, that kind of thing.
So it's really important to always keep learning, even after you graduate.
Definitely. The field's always changing, new technologies, new regulations.
It's a lot to keep up with.
Yeah, but that's part of what makes it exciting, right?
True.
The best in this field are always learning, expanding what they know.
So what you're saying is that Environmental engineering is not a static field at all.
Not even a little bit. It's constantly changing.
Yeah. You mentioned challenges earlier.
Oh, right. Yeah.
What are some of the things that someone going into this should be prepared for?
It's definitely a field that keeps you on your toes.
Yeah, for sure. But that's part of what makes it so cool, you know?
Yeah.
You're always learning, you're solving problems.
Right.
And you're actually making a difference.
Speaking of making a difference, one thing that struck me reading through this stuff was something about the emotional side of environmental engineering.
Yeah, that's huge.
Which I never really considered.
People don't talk about it enough.
What do you mean?
Well, imagine you're an environmental engineer.
Okay.
You're working on a project to protect a town on the coast, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sea levels are rising.
Right.
You're building seawalls, restoring wetlands, all that stuff.
Trying to, prevent disaster.
Exactly. But in the back of your mind,
you
know what happens if those measures fail?
Oh.
People lose their homes, their businesses.
It's a lot of responsibility.
It can be really heavy stuff.
Yeah, it's like suddenly all the data has real-world consequences.
Exactly, and it makes you realize how important it is to be resilient. Not just the infrastructure, but us too, the engineers.
Yeah, that's a good point.
We have to deal with these challenges, deal with the stress.
Right.
Stay motivated even when it feels impossible.
It's a lot.
It is.
So we've talked about like the present and the near future, but what about the long game?
Yeah.
What are some of the challenges that environmental engineers might face in like the coming decades?
Well, I mean, climate change is the big one, right? It's not just an environmental problem anymore. It's global.
It affects everything.
Everything. And environmental engineers will be the ones figuring out the solutions.
Okay.
Designing things to withstand climate change, new energy technologies, even figuring out how to remove carbon from the air.
So their work is only going to become more important.
100%.
Wow.
And it's going to require a lot of creativity. Collaboration. Like, take water scarcity.
Okay.
That's a huge problem.
Not worse,
Climate change is making it worse for sure.
Right.
Environmental engineers are already on it, though.
What are they doing?
Designing better irrigation systems.
Okay.
New ways to remove salt from water, even looking at, like, pulling water from the atmosphere.
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah, it's a constantly evolving field.
So you really have to be comfortable with change.
Oh, absolutely.
Like really comfortable.
The problems of tomorrow are going to look different than the problems of today.
Right.
You have to be ready for anything.
So a love of learning is essential.
Essential.
You've given us a lot to consider.
Is there, like, one final thought you want to leave us with?
If you want a career where you can truly make a difference, where you can use your skills, your passion for the environment, environmental engineering could be it. It's tough. It's rewarding.
Right.
And it's always changing. There's so much opportunity out there.
I have to say, this deep dive has been fascinating.
Learning about this, it gives me hope, you know?
That's great to hear.
So to everyone listening out there, if you feel that spark,
that desire to make the world a better place, a greener place, maybe give environmental engineering a look.
You never know. You could be the one to come up with the next big solution.
You never know.
It's been great talking to you.
You too.